Hello, and welcome to part 1 of 2 of our music theory videos, where I will be talking about the notes of a piano, scales, and different clefs, and how you can read music. While this video will be demonstrated with a piano, remember that you can use this information on any of your instruments. Let's first talk about the notes. The notes of any instrument is just a term that we use for a tone or a pitch, so like this. In sound, there are actually 12 different tones that have been converted to notes in music. That's actually 12. So let's say that we start on this note, which we call middle C. It doesn't really look like the middle on the screen right now, but it is the middle of the whole piano because there are notes like this and notes all the way up here. So we start on middle C, and the next white note, the white note right next to it is called D. And it's actually called a whole step in between those. So this is C and this is D. It's called a whole step because we actually skipped a note here. But what is that note? In music, we call the black notes sharp or flat. Sharp means the note is 1/2 step above. So here we have C, and we go a 1/2 step up, right? Or flat means it is a 1/2 step below. 1/2 step because you don't skip a note. Remember, the whole step from C to D skips the note in between. So is that note in between C sharp or is it D flat? It's actually both. It depends on the piece of music that you are playing if it is C sharp or D flat, but we will get into that later. The next white note is called E, then the one after that is called F, and then G, and then you would think that it actually goes to H, but then it goes to A, and then B, and then back to C again. So for middle C, the white notes going up go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, when starting on C. The reason why we started on C actually is because the C major scale, which we will talk about now, actually uses all of the white notes. Let's now talk about scales. As we just discovered, the white notes going up from middle C and to the next C make a C major scale. But what is a major scale? There are two main types of scales, major and minor. These scales are very different musically, but the thing you will notice immediately is that the major scale sounds more happy and upbeat, while the minor scale sounds more sad and gloomy. Both of these scales are actually used all the time in different musical pieces, and so that's why it's important to get to know them early on, so that when you start to play more advanced and intermediate pieces, you will know your scales because they're thrown in every single piece of music. For now, let's start on our friend middle C and learn the C major and minor scales. The C major scale, as we figured out already, uses all of the white keys, but more importantly, it follows a specific formula that works across all major scales. Starting from middle C, we do a whole step. So remember, a whole step means we skip one note, and then we do another whole step. Then we actually do a 1/2 step. So we come from E and we go to F without skipping a note. So that's a 1/2 step. And then we do 3 more whole steps. 1, 2, 3, and then we do another 1/2 step. This can be abbreviated to something called WWH, WWWH for whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So here is a little sticky note that shows this abbreviation. So feel free to write that down and make sure you know it, because it actually applies to all of the major scales. So if we start, let's say we start on E. Remember, we go C, D, E. So let's start on E major. Our formula is whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. So let's try it. We start on E, and then we go whole, and then half to A, whole to B, whole, 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 and then another half, back to E. Just like that. Now let's try starting on C and doing the C minor scale. So we start on C, and this time in the minor scale, we're gonna go whole, then we go half, and then we go another whole, whole, and then whole, and then half, and then whole, and then whole. Sounds like this. Abbreviated, this one becomes WH, WWH, WW, meaning whole, half, whole, half, whole. So make sure you write this one down. Let's try this one on E too. We start on E, and we go whole, half, whole, half, whole. So it's important to practice these scales on your instrument when you're warming up and just in general when you're playing, because it will help you with a ton of musical pieces and just getting familiar with the notes. At the end of this video, I will include some pictures of scales that you can practice with. Finally, let's look at how to read music on paper. In all music, there are two main clefs that we use to organize how we read music. Before learning these clefs, it's important to learn and memorize the musical alphabet so that you can find different notes on the clefs. Remember, starting on C, we go C, D, E, F, G, and then we go back to A, B, and back to C. Both C's, this is called an octave, the distance between one note to the next note. Or of the same note. It's called an octave. And then we have all the sharp and flat notes in between, right? So if we start on a different note, say F, then you just go up the alphabet until you get back to F. So you start on F, you go F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F. So it's important to remember that. Now let's get back to clefs. The treble clef, which is played with the right hand in the piano and which most instruments play, both wind and other, follows a simple acronym, FACE, or F-A-C-E, which lie on the spaces between the lines. Here's what this looks like on paper. We're going to get to the bottom one in a second, but the treble clef is this symbol right here, and the notes on the spaces that I just talked about are F, A, C, and E. And from there, you can actually figure out all the other notes on the clef. So the notes on the lines are just the notes that lie in between. So first we have F, which is right there, and then we have A, which is right here. So the note in between F and A is G. So that would be the note right on that line. And each note in between the spaces simply follows that alphabet. That's why it's so important to learn that. So another clef is the bass clef, which is played on the lower levels of the piano, all the way down there. So for this acronym, we want to remember all cows eat grass. And these are the lines in the spaces. Or these are the notes in the spaces, sorry, not in the lines. And in between the spaces, the notes on the lines you can figure out simply by going with that musical alphabet that we talked about. In between A and C, let's look on our piano. That's A, and that's C. And in between, we have B. So that is how you read the notes on the lines. So finally, to know if a note is sharp or flat, you want to look before the note. Here is an example of this. So here we have a flat note, and the flat notes look like a lowercase b. And this would simply indicate that you would play an E flat, because this is a C minor scale. Remember that one that we talked about? This would simply indicate that you play an E flat because you have the note and then you have a flat sign before it. So instead of playing E, you play flat. And here are some sharp notes. So for example, this note is A, as indicated on our little FACE sheet list here. This note in the treble clef is an A, but it has a sharp sign. So instead of playing A, we play A sharp, just like that. That's the end of this video. Here are the sheets with the clefs. So remember the treble and the bass clef, as well as some scales that you can use to practice on your own. Here are a bunch of different scales. In the next theory video, we will be talking about everything time related in music. So beat, rhythm, and different note values. So I hope that you stick around for that one as well. If you have any questions, please email csa.positivenotes@gmail.com. Hope this was helpful.